Captain Orion Hale had seen worse stations than Outpost Carinine, but not by much. The forgotten way station clung to the edge of civilized space like a barnacle on a derelict hull, servicing ships that couldn't afford better and housing souls that had nowhere else to go. Orion had been stranded there for 3 weeks, waiting for replacement parts that never seemed to arrive, watching his credits dwindle with each passing day. It was on his 5th night of rationing protein bars that he first saw them. 2 small figures huddled near the refuse chutes behind the station's marketplace, their oversized eyes reflecting the dim emergency lighting. Children on a station like this, that alone was unusual, but these weren't ordinary children. Their ears tapered to subtle points, and when the smaller one looked up at him, Orion caught the faint gleam of something inhuman in those amber eyes. Volfolk, Lupari, the galaxy called them, a proud species of warriors and hunters, now scattered across the stars after their homeworld had been consumed in the stellar wars. The children couldn't have been more than 6 or 7 standard years old, too young to be alone, too thin to be anyone's priority. Orion found himself walking toward them before his common sense could object. "Hey," he said softly, crouching down to their level. "You too hungry?" The older child, a girl with silver-streaked hair, bared her teeth. Instinctively, protective, the younger boy clutched her arm, trembling. Orion slowly pulled out one of his protein bars and held it forward. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." The girl's nose twitched, analyzing his scent for deception. After a long moment, she snatched the bar and tore it open, splitting it immediately with her brother. They devoured it in seconds. Something twisted in Orion's chest. He'd been a soldier once, had seen the aftermath of orbital bombardments and colony purges. He told himself he was done saving people. But watching these 2 children try to make themselves invisible in the shadows of an uncaring station, he couldn't walk away. "Same time tomorrow?" he asked. The girl stared at him with those unsettling amber eyes, then nodded once. It became routine. Every night after his fruitless attempts to track down his ship parts, Orion would stop by the marketplace with whatever food he could spare. Sometimes it was protein bars. Other times he managed to snag discarded ration packs from the station's military contingent. Once, he even brought them real meat from a trader's stall. The way their faces lit up had been worth the dent in his wallet. They never told him their names, never spoke much at all. But gradually the girl's defensive snarls softened into wary acceptance. The boy even smiled at him once, revealing tiny pointed canines. "Where's your mother?" Orion asked one night, trying to sound casual as he handed over a warm container of stew. The girl's ears flattened against her skull. "Gone," she said simply. "She works far away, and she left you here alone?" The boy spoke for the first time, his voice surprisingly firm. "Mama will come back. She always comes back." There was such conviction in those words that Orion didn't have the heart to challenge it. He'd seen enough abandoned children across the galaxy to know how this story usually ended. But if believing kept them going, who was he to take that away? The station's atmosphere shifted on the 18th night. Orion noticed it immediately, the way the usual crowds of smugglers and traders suddenly vanished from the corridors. The emergency lights flickered, then stabilized into a different pattern. Military protocol. Someone important had arrived. He was heading toward his usual meeting spot with the children when the station's intercom crackled to life. "All personnel are advised that Outpost Carinine is now under temporary Imperial authority. Comply with all directives from the Stellar Guard." Imperial authority, out here? Orion's instincts screamed danger. The Stellar Empire didn't venture to the rim stations unless something had gone catastrophically wrong or someone extraordinarily important needed to pass through. He broke into a run toward the refuse chutes. The children were there, but they weren't alone. A full squad of Stellar Guards surrounded them, elite warriors in gleaming armor, weapons drawn. And standing between the soldiers and the children was a figure that made Orion's breath catch in his throat. She was Lupari, that much was obvious from the elegant Volf-like features and the silver-white hair that cascaded down her back like starlight. But where the children were small and vulnerable, she radiated power. Her armor was crafted from materials Orion couldn't identify, inscribed with symbols that seemed to shift and glow. A crown of crystallized void metal rested on her head. Empress Le Reveille, the stellar empress herself. Orion had seen her face on wanted posters and propaganda broadcasts, the iron ruler of half the known galaxy. The Wolf Queen who had united dozens of fractured species under one banner through a combination of brilliant diplomacy and ruthless military conquest. She was a legend, a nightmare, a beacon of hope, depending on who you asked. And the two children were running toward her, crying, "Mama!" The world tilted sideways. The Empress dropped to her knees, gathering both children into her arms with a fierceness that contradicted every story Orion had heard about her cold, calculating nature. She buried her face in their hair, whispering words in a language he didn't understand. When she finally looked up, her eyes the same amber as her children's locked onto Orion, he should have run. Should have disappeared into the station's maze of corridors. Instead, he stood frozen as she approached, her guards tensing. "You," she said, her voice carrying the weight of authority that had commanded fleets. "You're the human who's been feeding my children." Orion's mouth went dry. I didn't know." "No," she interrupted, and something impossibly gentle entered her expression. "You didn't, yet you fed them anyway." "Asked for nothing in return." Expected nothing. She studied him for a long moment, and Orion had the distinct impression he was being evaluated by something far beyond human understanding. "I left them here," she continued, "because I needed to know they could survive without the weight of a crown, that they could experience something other than the gilded cage of empire." Her jaw tightened. "I had guards watching from the shadows. They reported every interaction. Every act of kindness from a stranger who had nothing to give." Orion found his voice. "They're just kids. Anyone would have—" "No," the Empress said firmly, "not anyone. Most walk past suffering if it doesn't serve them. You stopped. You sacrificed. You showed them that compassion isn't weakness even when the galaxy taught you otherwise." She stepped closer, and Orion realized she was studying him the way a general studies a valuable asset. "I have a proposition, Captain Halle. My empire is vast, but it lacks something crucial: humans who remember what it means to be human. Not soldiers, not politicians, just good people." She glanced back at her children, who watched with wide, hopeful eyes. "Would you consider a position in my court? My children could use a teacher. Someone who understands that strength and kindness aren't mutually exclusive." Orion looked at the children, then at the Empress, then at the impossible situation he'd stumbled into. He thought about walking away, about returning to his broken ship and his solitary life. Instead, he heard himself say, "Do I get to keep feeding them?" The stellar Empress smiled, a real smile, not the diplomatic mask she wore for the cameras. "Every night, if you wish." And just like that, Captain Orion Halle stopped being stranded and started being something he'd never expected, exactly where he needed to be.